The morning mist clung to the Douglas firs like forgotten prayers. Rowan Ashford stood at the edge of Crescent Lake, her breath forming small clouds in the October air, watching the way dawn broke across the Olympic Mountains. She had learned to love these moments, the hour when the world was still deciding what it wanted to be, when the boundary between night and day was just a suggestion. She understood boundaries. She lived between them. The radio on her hip crackled to life. Rowan, you copy. She pressed the button without taking her eyes off the water. Copy base. We've got another one. Mile marker 7 on the Hoh River Trail. Couple of hikers reported unusual animal behavior. Aggressive. Rowan's jaw tightened. That made 3 incidents in 2 weeks. What kind? Black bear. But they said it was acting strange. Not scared of them, not territorial, just wrong. She closed her eyes. Wrong. They always used that word when they couldn't explain what they'd seen, what their instincts screamed at them to run from. I'm on it, she said. The drive through the temperate rainforest was one she could make blind. 10 years as a ranger at Olympic National Park had carved these roads into her muscle memory, these trees into her bones. The Sitka spruce rose around her like cathedral columns, their branches draped with moss that filtered the thin morning light into something ethereal, something that made her ache. She parked at the trailhead and began walking. The forest floor was soft with decay-fallen logs becoming nurse logs, death feeding life, everything in constant transformation. She should find comfort in that. Instead, it reminded her that change was inevitable, that nothing stayed in one shape for long, especially not her. Rowan felt it before she saw it, that electric prickle at the base of her skull that told her something was watching. She stopped hand-moving instinctively to the canister of bear spray on her belt. But the sensation was wrong. This wasn't the attention of an animal. This was something else. She scanned the undergrowth, the massive trunks, the green shadows between. Nothing moved. But there, 20 feet off the trail, something metal glinted in the filtered light. Rowan approached slowly, parting the sword ferns with her boot. It was small, maybe the size of a quarter, fixed to the bark of a hemlock with what looked like industrial adhesive. A camera. High-tech, expensive, definitely not Park Service issue. Her fingers hovered over it, but didn't touch. Someone was watching this place. The question was why. The radio crackled again. Rowan update? She stepped back, memorizing the location. Still tracking. The bear. Moved on, apparently. Hikers are shaken, but fine. But listen, there is something else. We've got a new arrival coming through this week. Photography permit holder. Management wants you to give him the orientation tour. Rowan grimaced. She hated this part of the job, babysitting amateur photographers who thought they could capture the soul of the wilderness in a lens. Can't Mitchell do it? Mitchell's dealing with the search and rescue training. It has to be you. Name's Marlowe Cross. His permit is for 3 months full access, and apparently he's some kind of big deal in the nature photography world. 3 months. She'd have to endure 3 months of this. Fine, she said. When tomorrow, 9 a.m. at the visitor center. That night, Rowan couldn't sleep. She lay in her cabin, a small ranger station deep in the park far from the main buildings, and listened to the forest breathe. Sometimes on nights like this, she wanted to slip out of her skin to feel the wind through feathers or the earth beneath paws. The urge was always there, humming beneath her thoughts like a second heartbeat. But she couldn't. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. Her eyes drifted to the photograph on the nightstand. Iris, smiling, 17 years old, her arm around Rowan's shoulders. They'd been inseparable once, 2 girls who shared a secret that bound them tighter than blood. Both shapeshifters, both learning to control gifts that felt more like curses. Until the day Rowan lost control. She could still see at the parking lot the crowd of students, the way panic had seized her chest when Marcus Chen started pushing Iris, calling her names. Rowan had felt her bones start to shift, her vision sharpening, her teeth lengthening. She tried to stop it, tried to breathe through it like they'd practiced. But the wolf came anyway. What happened next was chaos, screaming, running, and Iris trying to shield her, trying to pull attention away, stepping in front of a panicked driver who wasn't watching where he was going. The impact, the sound, the silence after. Rowan had run, then still half changed into the woods where she belonged, where she'd stayed mostly for the last 10 years. She pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. Sleep wouldn't come. It never did when the memories were this close. At 3 in the morning, she gave in. She stripped off her clothes, feeling the cool air against her skin, and let the change take her. It started in her chest, a pulling sensation like being turned inside out slowly. Her bones shortened and reshaped her hands, becoming paws, her face elongating into a muzzle. Fur rippled across her body like water. The wolf shook herself, adjusting to the new weight distribution, the new senses. Everything was sharper now, the scent of elk in the distance, the sound of an owl's wings cutting through air, the taste of frost forming on the leaves. She ran, through the forest, across streams under the canopy where moonlight barely reached. This was freedom. This was truth. This was the only time she didn't have to pretend to be entirely human. By dawn, she was back in her cabin, naked and shivering, more tired than before, but at least quiet inside. Marlowe Cross arrived exactly on time. Rowan watched from the visitor center window as he parked a black Land Rover and stepped out. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that fell just past his collar. He moved carefully, she noticed, like someone aware of their own body in space, aware of being watched. He wore gloves, despite the mild temperature, and when he tilted his head back to look at the mountains, she saw the sharp angle of his jaw, the way his eyes, even from this distance, seemed to take in everything. Something in her chest tightened, a warning maybe, or recognition. She pushed through the door to meet him, Marlowe Cross. He turned, and for a moment they just looked at each other. His eyes were gray, she realized, the color of storm clouds over the Pacific. There was something in his gaze, something that made her feel exposed, like he could see past the ranger uniform to the thing beneath. "That's me." His voice was lower than she expected, rough around the edges. "You must be Ranger Ashford." "Rowan is fine." She gestured to the trail map on the information board. "I understand you were here for 3 months. That's a long time. I'm patient." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm looking for something specific, the kind of shot that takes time." "What kind of shot?" He paused, considering his words. "Light through old growth. The way things change in the transition between seasons. The moment before transformation." The last word hung in the air between them. Rowan felt that electric prickle again, the one that said, "Pay attention." "Well," she said, forcing her voice to stay level, "you're in the right place. Olympic has some of the oldest temperate rainforest in the world. But it's also dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. We've had some unusual animal activity lately." "Unusual how?" "Aggressive, unpredictable. Bears mostly, but other reports too. You need to stay alert." Marlowe nodded slowly, his gloved hands tucked into his jacket pockets. "I'm good at staying alert." They spent the next 4 hours hiking through the park. Rowan took him along the Hoh River Trail, pointing out the nurse logs, the Roosevelt elk grazing in the meadows, the way the Sitka spruce created their own ecosystem in the canopy. He asked good questions, not the usual tourist inquiries, but specific things about animal migration patterns, about the way the watershed affected the forest floor, about which areas were most remote. "Why the gloves?" she asked when they stopped for water. He looked down at his hands as if surprised to find them covered. "Skin condition, sensitivity to sunlight." It was a lie. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. The same way she knew when a storm was coming or when a predator was near. Instinct. "You're not really here for photography, are you?" The words came out before she could stop them. Marlowe went very still. When he looked at her, there was something raw in his expression, something almost desperate. "What makes you say that?" "Just a feeling." They stood there simmering in the green shadows, the forest breathing around them. Two strangers who weren't quite strangers, holding secrets that felt too heavy to carry alone. "I'm here for photography," he said finally. "But you're right, I'm looking for something else too." "What?" "I can't tell you, not yet." He stepped closer and she could smell him now, pine and smoke, and something underneath that was pure wild. "But I think you understand about secrets, don't you, Rowan?" Her heart was beating too fast. Run, every instinct screamed. This man is dangerous. But she stood her ground, meeting his gray eyes with her own dark ones. "Everyone has secrets out here," she said quietly. "Not like ours." The word dropped between them like a stone in still water. "Ours." As if he knew. As if he could see the thing inside her, the wolf waiting just beneath her skin. Before she could respond, her radio crackled to life. "Rowan, we have a situation. Reports of a grizzly on the Sol Duke Trail. It charged a group of hikers. We need you to track it." She grabbed the radio. Grizzlies don't live in this park. We know, but 3 people just saw one. And Rowan, they said it was massive, bigger than any bear should be. Her blood ran cold. She looked at Marlowe, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I have to go, she said. You should head back to, I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. This is ranger business. I know these woods. His voice was firm now, leaving no room for argument. And I know bears. You might need backup. There wasn't time to argue. Something in the forest was wrong, had been wrong for weeks, and now it was escalating. She could feel it like a pulse in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. Stay close, she ordered. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? He nodded, but there was something in his eyes that said he wouldn't run from anything. The Solduke Trail cut through some of the densest forest in the park. Ancient cedars towered overhead, their bark thick as armor, their roots snaking across the path like veins. Rowan moved quickly but carefully, reading the signs: broken branches at head height, claw marks too high up the trunks, the sharp scent of fear sweat from the hikers who'd fled. Marlowe kept pace beside her, unnaturally quiet for someone unfamiliar with the terrain. He moved like he belonged here, like the forest recognized him as one of its own. They found the hikers' first 3 college students huddled behind a massive log, pale and shaking. Where? Rowan asked. A girl with blonde hair pointed north toward the river. It went that way. God, it was huge, like 8 feet tall when it stood up. Its eyes, she broke off, shuddering. Its eyes weren't right. Rowan felt ice slide down her spine. Get back to the trailhead. Now, don't stop until you reach the parking lot. She waited until they were gone, then turned to Marlowe. You should go with them. No, listen, no. He stepped in front of her, and there was something in his expression, now something fierce and determined. Whatever's out there, you can't face it alone. I'm trained for. The roar cut through the forest like a chainsaw through silk. It was deep, primal wrong. No bear made that sound, no natural creature. Rowan and Marlowe turned together, and there it was. The grizzly stood 30 feet away, massive and silver-tipped, its shoulders higher than her head. But the hikers were right, its eyes were wrong. They glowed with an almost luminescent quality, fever bright, and there was an intelligence in them that made her skin crawl. It wasn't looking at them like prey, it was looking at them like it knew them. Rowan, Marlowe said quietly, get behind me. What? No, I said get behind me. The bear charged. Everything happened in seconds. Rowan grabbed the bear spray from her belt, but she knew it wouldn't be enough, not for something this size, this enraged. The ground shook with each step as the grizzly closed the distance. 20 feet, 15, 10. She felt the change starting in her chest, the wolf clawing its way to the surface, responding to the threat. No, she thought desperately, not here, not in front of him. But then Marlowe did something impossible. He stepped forward, pulling off his gloves, and the air around him seemed to shimmer. For a heartbeat, he was blurred like a photograph out of focus. And then he wasn't a man anymore. He was a bear. Not just any bear, a grizzly, even larger than the one charging them with fur so dark it was almost black, and eyes that burned with the same gray intensity as his human ones. He rose up on his hind legs, towering, and released a roar that made the trees shake. The attacking bear skidded to a stop, confused, swaying slightly. The glow in its eyes flickered like a bad connection. For a moment, the 2 bears faced each other. One crazed and wrong, one powerful and controlled. Then the infected bear turned and ran crashing through the undergrowth like a freight train, leaving silence in its wake. Rowan stood frozen, her own change suspended halfway, her hands partially shifted into paws, her teeth too sharp in her mouth. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The dark bear that was Marlowe turned to look at her, and she knew he could see exactly what she was. For a long moment, they stared at each other, 2 shapeshifters caught between forms, all their secrets laid bare in the green shadows of the Olympic forest. Then Marlowe shifted back. The change was smoother than hers ever was, a fluid transformation that seemed almost effortless. He stood before her, human again, breathing hard, his gray eyes locked on her partially transformed hands. I can explain, he said quietly. Rowan felt her own form snap back to human with painful abruptness. Her hands were shaking. Everything was shaking. You're like me. Yes, that bear. You staged that attack to get me out here to see. No. He stepped toward her, hands raised. No, I swear. I didn't know you were. He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. I've been alone for so long. I thought I was the only one left. The forest was quiet around them, holding its breath. How? Rowan whispered. How are you? How can you become different animals? I'm limited to what my bloodline carries. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or fear. I'm what's called an alpha shifter. I can take any form, but there's a price. What price? He looked away, and in profile she could see the exhaustion carved into his features, the weight of something she didn't understand yet. Every time I shift, I lose a little more of myself, my memories, my humanity. In 6 months, maybe less, I won't remember my own name. The words hit her like a physical blow. That's why you're here. There's a legend, an old story about a spring hidden somewhere in this park. The origin spring. It's supposed to cure shifters of their affliction. Let them choose to be human forever. He turned back to her, and his eyes were full of desperate hope. I have to find it, Rowan, before I forget why I'm looking. She wanted to say it was impossible, that legends were just stories. But she couldn't, because she was standing in the Olympic forest, having just watched a man turn into a bear while her own wolf prowled restlessly beneath her skin. Nothing was impossible. I don't know anything about a spring, she said finally, but the attacks, the animals acting strange. You think it's connected? I think something is very wrong in this forest. Something that affects shifters. That bear, it wasn't just aggressive. It was being controlled. His jaw tightened. Someone is watching this place. Someone who knows what we are. The camera, the one she'd found that morning hidden off the trail, she hadn't reported it yet. I found something, she said slowly, a surveillance device. High tech, not park service. Marlowe's expression darkened. Show me. They hiked back through the forest as the afternoon light began to fail, neither speaking, both processing what had just happened. The reveal, the exposure, the impossible connection between two people who had thought themselves utterly alone. When they reached the hemlock where Rowan had found the camera, it was gone. Not just removed, the entire section of bark had been stripped away, leaving a raw wound in the tree. Someone knew you found it, Marlowe said quietly. Rowan felt the wolf stir in her chest, a low growl of warning. We're being hunted. Yes. They stood in the fading light, two shapeshifters surrounded by shadows, and Rowan realized her carefully constructed life of solitude had just shattered. For 10 years, she'd kept everyone at arm's length, terrified of letting anyone close enough to see what she really was. Now, this man, this impossible, dangerous man, knew everything. And somehow that didn't feel like the end of the world. It felt like the beginning of something else entirely. I have a cabin, she said, about 3 miles from here. No one else around. We can talk there. Figure out what to do. Marlowe nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You just destroyed my quiet life. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Sorry. No, you're not. No, he admitted. I'm not. The cabin was small but comfortable, one room with a loft, a wood stove for heat, and windows that looked out into the endless forest. Rowan lit a fire while Marlowe examined the books on her shelves, running his still ungloved fingers over the spines. You read a lot about shifter folklore, he observed. I tried to understand what I am, what we are. There's not much out there. No, we're good at hiding. We have to be. He pulled down a worn journal with no title. What's this? Rowan's chest tightened. My mother's diary. She was a shifter too. She died when I was 15. Marlowe opened it carefully, treating the pages with reverence. Does it say anything about the spring? I don't know. I've never read all of it. She poked at the fire, watching sparks fly up the chimney. It hurt too much, seeing her handwriting, reading about all the things she hid from me. He closed the journal and set it on the table between them. I understand. My mother left me a letter, told me what would happen to me. I burned it after I read it the first time. Too angry. Do you regret it? Every day. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling, the forest dark beyond the windows. Rowan studied him in the flickering light, the sharp planes of his face, the way his hands moved restlessly, like they wanted to be something else. the exhaustion that clung to him like cobwebs. "How long have you been searching?" she asked. 2 years. I've been to every national park on the West Coast. Yellowstone, Glacier, North Cascades. Following rumors, chasing stories. Olympic was my last hope." He looked at her. "And then I met you. I can't help you find the spring. I don't know where it is. Maybe not, but you know this forest. You know its secrets." He leaned forward. "And more than that, you're like me. Do you understand how rare that is? How impossible?" "I've been alone for 10 years, Rowan said quietly, "since I killed my best friend." She told him then about Iris, about the parking lot and the change she couldn't stop and the terrible accident that followed, about running into the woods and never really coming back. Marlowe listened without interruption, his gray eyes never leaving her face. "It wasn't your fault," he said when she finished. "I lost control. You were 17, untrained, terrified." He reached across the table but stopped before touching her, his hand hovering in the space between them. "Who taught you how to shift?" "No one. My mother was going to, but she died before she could. I figured it out on my own. Trial and error. A lot of error." "Then it's a miracle you survived it all. Most young shifters don't make it past their first change without guidance." "How did you survive?" His expression shuddered. "I had a teacher, for a while, until they couldn't help me anymore." There was a story there painful and unfinished. Rowan didn't push. Instead, she said, "If someone is watching us hunting shifters, we need to know who and why." Agreed. That bear that attacked it wasn't rabid. It was being controlled somehow. Manipulated. Marlowe stood and paced to the window. "There are stories, old stories about humans who discovered what we are and tried to use us. Experiments. Weapons. If someone has that technology now, then every shifter in this park is in danger. If there are any others?" Rowan thought about the other incidents over the past weeks. The aggressive elk, the wolves that stalked hikers during daylight, the cougar that attacked a tent. All wrong, all infected with that same fever-bright glow in their eyes. "There are others," she said. "They're just not human anymore." The weight of that realization settled over them like ash. Marlowe turned from the window. "We need to find them, help them if we can, and we need to find whoever is doing this before they finish whatever they started." "And the spring?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know, maybe saving others is more important than saving myself." There was something in his voice, a resignation, a grief that made Rowan stand and cross to him. She stopped a foot away, close enough to feel his warmth, far enough to maintain the careful distance they both needed. "When you shift," she said quietly, "do you remember what it's like to be human? Less and less. The wolf remembers the man. The bear remembers the wolf, but each form is further from the truth." "Which truth?" "Who I used to be before I was a weapon, before I was a monster." "You're not a monster." He looked down at her, and in the firelight his eyes were molten silver. "How do you know?" "Because monsters don't search for redemption. They don't try to save others. They don't." She stopped, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how the air between them felt charged with possibility. "They don't look at someone like you're looking at me right now. And how am I looking at you? Like you finally found what you've been searching for. And it's not a spring." The moment stretched taut as wire. Marlowe raised his hand slowly, giving her time to step back to refuse. When she didn't move, he touched her face, just his fingertips against her cheekbone, a contact so light it barely existed. But she felt it everywhere. In her wolf heart, in her bones that knew his bones, in the part of her that had been alone for so long, she'd forgotten what connection felt like. "Rowan," he said, her name rough in his throat. "I'm dying, slowly maybe, but certainly. Getting close to me is dangerous." "I've been alone for 10 years, she replied. "Danger might be exactly what I need." Outside, the forest whispered its ancient secrets. Inside, two shifters stood in the firelight, recognizing each other across the impossible distance of solitude, making a choice that would change everything. Tomorrow they would hunt for answers. They would face whatever force was turning shifters into weapons. They would search for a spring that might not exist. But tonight they would simply stand together, two souls caught between forms, no longer quite so alone. Marlowe's hand moved from her cheek to her hair, and Rowan leaned into the touch like a wolf leaning into pack, like coming home to a place she'd never been. "Stay," she whispered. "I will, for as long as I can remember why." And in the quiet of the cabin surrounded by forests that held its own transformations, they made their first promise to each other, not of forever, because forever was a luxury neither could claim, but of now, of this moment. Of two shapeshifters choosing for the first time in a long time not to face the darkness alone. Rowan woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of pages turning. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was, only that she felt warm, safer than she had in years. Then the memories of yesterday crashed back. Marlowe, the bear, the revelation that she wasn't alone in her strangeness. She sat up in the loft, looking down to find him at her small table, steam rising from two mugs, her mother's journal open in front of him. Morning light filtered through the windows, painting him in shades of gold and shadow. "You're reading it," she said. He looked up and there was something gentle in his expression. "I hope that's okay. I couldn't sleep, and I thought—" He paused. "I thought maybe your mother knew something about what's happening here." Rowan climbed down the ladder, accepting the coffee he offered. It was perfect, strong black, exactly how she took it. "How did you know?" "I watched you make it yesterday, before everything. Before their worlds collided. Before they stopped being strangers." She sat across from him, cradling the warm mug. "Did you find anything?" "Maybe." He turned the journal so she could see. The entry was dated March 15th, 1998, 3 months before her mother died. "Read this part." Rowan's eyes traced her mother's familiar handwriting. "The dreams are getting worse. I see him every night now. Evelyn's boy, though he's not a boy anymore. He's 17 and he's changing. Not just physically. There's something in his blood, something we didn't understand when we were young and reckless. Alpha genetics, cross-species capability. The elders warned us this could happen if shifter bloodlines mixed the wrong way. I should tell Rowan. She deserves to know she might have a half-brother out there somewhere. That her father wasn't who I told her he was. But how do I explain that I loved an alpha shifter, that we created something beautiful and impossible, and that I had to give him up to save us both? The origin spring is real. I've seen it. But its power comes with a price. It can cure, yes, but it can also amplify. In the wrong hands, it could turn shifters into weapons. That's why we sealed it away, why we swore never to speak of it again. If anyone finds this journal, if anything happens to me, the spring is in the Whisper Caves beneath the Western Ridge. But please, please, don't go looking for it unless you have no other choice." Rowan's hands were shaking so badly she had to set down the coffee. "Half-brother," she whispered. "She's saying I have a—" "It's not me," Marlowe said quickly. "My mother's name was Catherine, not Evelyn. But—" He hesitated. "But your mother knew mine. They were friends, maybe, part of the same circle. A circle of shifters. It seems so, and they knew about the spring. They hid it deliberately." He tapped the journal. "Your mother died in 1998. I was 12. But she was dreaming about an alpha shifter boy who was 17. Which means he'd be in his mid-40s now, if he's still alive." Rowan's mind was racing. "Do you think he's still here in the park?" "I think if there are infected shifters being controlled, and if someone is hunting for the spring, then yes, I think there are more of us here than we realize, and some of them might not be acting of their own free will." The implications settled over them like frost. Somewhere in this forest, there might be shifters who'd been here all along. Watching, waiting, or being used. Rowan stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "The Whisper Caves, I know where that is. It's off-limits to tourists, unstable rock formations. We don't patrol there often." She turned back. "If the spring is real, if someone else is looking for it, then we need to find it first." Marlowe closed the journal carefully. "But we need to understand what we're walking into. Your mother said the spring could amplify shifter abilities, turn them into weapons. What if that's what's happening to the infected animals? You think someone already found it. I think someone is using it, experimenting, building something." His jaw clenched. "And we need to stop them before they perfect whatever they're creating." They spent the morning planning. Rowan mapped out the route to Whisper Caves, a 6-hour hike through some of the most remote terrain in the park. Marlowe checked his camera equipment, though they both knew photography was the last thing on his mind now. "We should go tonight," he said. "Less chance of running into hikers. And if something goes wrong, we can shift without witnesses. Rowan folded the map. But Marlowe, if you shift too much, if you lose more of yourself, I know the risks. Do you? Because 6 months isn't very long. Every transformation brings you closer to a... She couldn't finish the sentence. He crossed to her, standing close enough that she could feel his warmth. Rowan, I've been dying slowly for 2 years. If I can use the time I have left to stop whatever's happening here to keep other shifters safe, then that's how I want to spend it. And if we find the string, if we can cure you... His eyes were infinitely sad. Then maybe I get a chance at a normal life, but I stopped believing in maybes a long time ago. She wanted to argue to tell him that hope wasn't foolish, that they could fix this. But she'd spent 10 years running from hope, terrified of what it might cost. She had no right to preach what she didn't practice. Instead, she said, we leave at sunset. That gives us time to gather supplies. And to rest. You barely slept. Neither did you. A ghost of a smile. I'm used to it. The nightmares are worse than the insomnia. What do you dream about? He turned away, looking out at the forest. Forgetting. Every night I dream I wake up and I don't know my own name. Don't know why I'm here. Don't remember what I'm looking for. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Don't remember the people I loved. Rowan's chest tightened. She moved to stand beside him, their shoulders almost touching. Tell me something you don't want to forget. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, my mother used to sing when she cooked. Old songs, folk songs, things her grandmother taught her. I can still hear the melody, but the words are starting to slip away. He swallowed hard. I'm terrified that one day I'll forget what her voice sounded like. Without thinking, Rowan reached for his hand. Their fingers interlaced, and the contact sent a jolt through her, not just physical, but something deeper. Recognition, connection. Like their wolves were greeting each other beneath their skin. Then we'll find the spring, she said fiercely. And you'll remember everything. Your mother's songs, your own name, all of it. Marlowe looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you turned into a bear to save me yesterday. I know you spent the night reading my mother's journal looking for answers. I know you're willing to sacrifice yourself to protect others. She squeezed his hand. That's not nothing. Rowan, don't tell me it's dangerous to care. I've been playing it safe for 10 years and all it got me was loneliness. Maybe it's time to take a risk. He lifted their joined hands, pressing his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so unexpected and tender it stole her breath. You're the first person in 2 years who's looked at me like I'm still human. You are human. You're just also something more. Or something less. No. She pulled him closer until they were standing chest to chest, until she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. Not less. Never less. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her. The air between them felt electric, charged with possibility. But then he stepped back, releasing her hand, and the moment broke like a soap bubble. Tonight, he said, his voice rough, we find the spring tonight, and then we figure out the rest. They hiked through the afternoon deeper into the forest than most tourists ever ventured. The trees here were ancient, their trunks so wide it would take 6 people holding hands to encircle them. Moss hung from branches like tattered curtains, and the air smelled of decay and growth, death, and life intertwined. Rowan led the way, following game trails and ranger paths she'd memorized over the years. Marlowe moved behind her, silent as shadow, and she found herself hyper-aware of his presence. The sound of his breathing, the way he navigated the terrain with predator grace. They were 2 hours in when they found the first body. It was a deer, or had been. Now it lay sprawled across the path, its neck twisted at an impossible angle, its eyes still open and glowing with that fever-bright light. But it wasn't dead. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths, and when Rowan approached, its head swiveled to track her movement. Don't touch it, Marlowe warned. But Rowan was already kneeling beside the animal, her hand hovering over its flank. She could feel something wrong with it, a vibration in the air, a wrongness that made her wolf recoil. It's still alive, she whispered. But it's not in there anymore. Whatever this deer was, it's gone. Something else is wearing it. Marlowe crouched beside her, studying the deer with clinical precision. Look at the base of its skull. There, barely visible through the fur, was a small metal device, no bigger than a quarter, embedded in the flesh. It pulsed with a faint blue light in rhythm with the deer's breathing. "Someone's controlling it," Rowan said, horror blooming in her chest. "Someone put that in there and turned it into a puppet. Not just controlling, experimenting." Marlowe pointed to the deer's legs where the muscle structure looked wrong, too developed. "They're trying to enhance it, make it stronger, faster. A weapon. We have to help it. Rowan, we have to try." She reached for the device, intending to pull it free, but the moment her fingers made contact, the deer convulsed. Its legs kicked out, catching her in the chest and sending her sprawling backward. Marlowe caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her away as the deer began to scream a sound no deer should make, high and anguished and terribly human. Then it went still. The light in its eyes faded, and this time it was truly dead. Rowan stood on shaking legs, her chest aching from the impact. "What the hell was that? A mercy, maybe?" Marlowe's voice was grim. "Whatever was done to it, there's no coming back from that. The kindest thing was to let it go." She wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. The deer hadn't been a deer anymore. It had been a shell animated by technology and cruelty. "How many others?" she asked quietly. "How many creatures in this forest are being used like this?" "I don't know, but we're going to find out." They continued hiking, and as the sun began to set, they found 3 more infected animals: a raccoon, an eagle, and a cougar. All had the same device embedded at the base of their skulls. All had the same fever-bright eyes, and all died when Rowan tried to remove the devices. By the time they reached the foothills of the western ridge, full dark had fallen, and Rowan felt sick to her stomach. "Someone is turning this forest into a laboratory," she said, "using shifters and animals as test subjects." "Yes, and whoever it is has resources, technology, knowledge." Marlowe scanned the darkening forest. "We need to be careful. If they know we're here, if they're watching..." A branch snapped to their left. They both froze, every sense heightened. Rowan's hand went to the knife at her belt, but Marlowe touched her arm, shaking his head. They needed to see what was coming before they reacted. A figure emerged from the shadows, human-shaped, but moving wrong, jerky and puppet-like. As it stepped into a shaft of moonlight, Rowan's blood ran cold. It was a man, maybe 45, with wild hair and clothes that hung off his too-thin frame. And embedded at the base of his skull was the same device they'd seen on the animals. But worse, she recognized him. Thomas Crane, a ranger who'd gone missing 6 months ago. They'd searched for weeks, assumed he'd fallen or been attacked by wildlife. Now here he stood, his eyes glowing blue, his mouth hanging open in a silent scream. "Thomas," she breathed. The infected ranger's head snapped toward her voice, and then he charged. Marlowe reacted instantly, shifting mid-step into a mountain lion, all muscle and fury. He intercepted Thomas, knocking him sideways, but the infected ranger was inhumanly strong. He grabbed Marlowe by the scruff and threw him against a tree with enough force to crack bark. Rowan felt her own shift, beginning the wolf clawing its way to the surface, responding to danger and rage. But before she could complete the transformation, another voice cut through the night. "Stop!" The single word carried weight authority. Thomas froze mid-attack, his glowing eyes going dim. Marlowe, still in mountain lion form, backed away, slowly, hackles raised. A woman stepped into the clearing. She was middle-aged, maybe 50, with steel gray hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that gleamed with intelligence and something else, hunger. She wore a white lab coat over hiking gear, and in her hand was a small tablet that glowed with the same blue light as the devices. "Ranger Ashford," the woman said pleasantly, "and Mr. Cross, how nice of you to come to me. It saves considerable time." Rowan's blood turned to ice. "Who are you?" "Der Pieter Helena Voss. I've been studying you both for some time now. Well, studying Mr. Cross for 2 years and you Ranger Ashford for about 6 months, since you stumbled upon one of my cameras." She smiled, cold and clinical. "Did you really think you could hide what you are forever?" Marlowe shifted back to human, positioning himself between Rowan and Dower. "Dr. Voss, you're the one controlling the infected animals." "Controlling is such a harsh word. I prefer enhancing, optimizing. These creatures, shifters and wildlife alike, have such potential. But they're limited by biology, by outdated evolution. I'm simply helping them reach their full capability by turning them into slaves." Rowan's voice shook with rage. by destroying their minds and using their bodies. Sacrifices must be made for progress. Dr. Voss tapped her tablet, and Thomas twitched his head, turning toward them with mechanical precision. I've spent 20 years studying shapeshifter genetics. Do you know how rare you are? How valuable an alpha shifter? She looked at Marlowe with barely concealed greed. You're the first I've encountered. The possibilities are endless. You're insane, Marlowe said flatly. I'm pragmatic. Shifters like you could be the next evolution of military technology. Imagine soldiers who can become any creature, infiltrate any environment, adapt to any threat. Her eyes glittered. All I need is the catalyst, the thing that amplifies your abilities. And I believe you two are going to lead me right to it, the origin spring. She was talking about the spring. We don't know what you're talking about. Rowan lied. Please. I've read your mother's well, the relevant parts. You've been kind enough to leave it in your cabin for the past 6 months. Did you really think I couldn't get to it? Voss smiled. The Whisper Caves, the Western Ridge, the spring that can cure or amplify shifter genetics. That's where you're headed right now, isn't it? Marlowe's jaw clenched. Even if we knew where it was, we'd never tell you. You don't have to tell me, you just have to lead me there. She tapped her tablet again, and Thomas lurched forward. Mr. Crane here will escort you. And if you try to run, if you try to shift, I have 6 more of my enhanced subjects surrounding this area. They'll tear you apart before you can take 3 steps. As if summoned shapes emerged from the darkness, more infected rangers and hikers, all with glowing eyes, all moving with that terrible puppet-like precision. They were trapped. Rowan looked at Marlowe, seeing her own desperation reflected in his eyes. They could fight, maybe take down 2 or 3 of the infected before being overwhelmed. But there were too many, and Dr. Voss had control of them all. What do you want? Rowan asked, buying time, trying to think. I want what I've always wanted, to unlock the full potential of shapeshifter genetics, to create the perfect soldier, the perfect weapon. Dr. Voss gestured to the infected surrounding them. These are just prototypes, crude, unstable. But with the spring, with its amplification properties, I can perfect the process. I can make shifters who never lose control, who never forget who they are, who can change at will without cost. That's not what the spring does, Marlowe said. It cures shifters. It removes the ability entirely. Perhaps, or perhaps that's just what the old stories claim. I won't know until I test it. Her smile widened. And you, Mr. Cross with your alpha genetics and your progressive memory loss will make an excellent test subject. Think of it, if my theory is correct, the spring won't cure you. It will make you into something extraordinary, something beyond human or shifter, something new. Rowan felt sick. This woman wasn't just hunting shifters, she was trying to create a new species. And she'd use them, torture them, destroy them in the process. We won't help you, she said. Then you'll watch while I dissect your friend here piece by piece. Voss nodded to Thomas. Take them, restrain them. We move out in 5 minutes. The infected closed in their roved minds, synchronized their eyes empty of anything resembling free will. Rowan's wolf howled inside her chest, desperate to break free to fight. But Marlowe caught her eye and shook his head fractionally. Not yet. They needed to wait for the right moment. Thomas grabbed Rowan's arms, his grip inhumanly strong, his fingers pressing into her skin hard enough to bruise. Another infected ranger secured Marlowe. They were marched forward deeper into the forest, toward the Western Ridge and the Whisper Caves, toward the spring that could either save them or doom everyone. They walked for hours through the darkness, the infected moving with tireless precision around them. Dr. Voss led the way, consulting her tablet and occasionally speaking into a radio in clipped professional tones. Apparently she had a base camp somewhere, a team resources. This was no lone mad scientist, this was an operation. Rowan's mind raced, trying to find an angle, a weakness. But every time she tensed to fight, Thomas's grip tightened, and she could feel the wrongness radiating from him. Whatever Dr. Voss had done, it had turned him into something that wasn't entirely alive anymore. A weapon wearing the shape of a man. Beside her, Marlowe walked in silence, but she could see the gears turning behind his eyes. He was planning something. She just hoped it wouldn't cost him what little humanity he had left. The moon was high when they finally reached the Western Ridge. The terrain became rocky, unstable, exactly as Rowan remembered. The Whisper Caves were named for the strange acoustics when, moving through the stone formations, created sounds like voices, whispers in languages no one could understand. Tonight, the whispers sounded like warnings. "Here," Dr. Voss announced, stopping before a narrow cleft in the rock face. "Your mother's journal described this entrance. Beyond it should be a series of caverns leading down to an underground spring." She turned to Rowan and Marlowe. "You'll go first. Clear the way. Make sure it's safe." "And if we refuse," Marlowe asked, "then I start removing your fingers one by one until you cooperate." And she said it so pleasantly, so matter-of-factly, that the threat was somehow worse. "I don't need you intact, Mr. Cross. I just need your DNA." Rowan met Marlowe's eyes. He nodded fractionally. They would play along, for now. Thomas released his grip on Rowan, and she stumbled forward, her arms aching. Marlowe was pushed forward beside her. Together they approached the cleft in the rock. "Remember," Dr. Voss called after them, "my subjects are right behind you. No tricks." They squeezed through the narrow opening, and suddenly the world opened up. The cavern beyond was massive, its ceiling lost in darkness, its wall glittering with mineral deposits that caught their flashlight beams and reflected them in 1,000 points of light. And in the center, illuminated by some source Rowan couldn't identify, was a pool of water that glowed with a soft, ethereal blue. The origin spring. It was real. It was here. And it was more beautiful than any legend could describe. "My God," Marlowe breathed. Behind them, they could hear Dr. Voss and her infected subjects squeezing through the cleft. They had maybe 30 seconds before the woman claimed the spring for herself. Rowan turned to Marlowe, grabbing his hand. "We can't let her have it." "I know. But if you use it, if you drink from it, I'll either be cured or I'll become the monster she wants me to be." His jaw clenched. "Either way, I lose." "No, there's another option." Rowan pulled him toward the spring. "We both drink. We share whatever happens. If it amplifies you, it amplifies me too. We face it together." "Rowan, you don't know what that could do." "I know. I'm not letting you face this alone." DeVos emerged from the cleft, her eyes widening at the sight of the spring. "Magnificent," she whispered. Then her voice sharpened. "Step away from the water, both of you, now." But Rowan and Marlowe had already made their choice. They looked at each other one last time. Two shifters who'd found each other in the darkness, who'd chosen connection over isolation, risk over safety. "Together," Rowan said. "Together," Marlowe agreed. And they plunged their hands into the origin spring. The water was ice cold and burning hot simultaneously. The moment it touched their skin, Rowan felt it rushing through her veins like liquid lightning. She gasped, her vision going white, her wolf screaming inside her chest. Beside her, Marlowe made a sound of agony, his body convulsing. The spring wasn't curing them. It was changing them. Rowan felt her DNA rewriting itself, felt new pathways opening in her mind, new forms becoming possible. She could be a wolf, yes, but now she could feel the potential for more eagle cougar, bear shapes she'd never imagined. The limitations her bloodline had placed on her were shattering like glass. And Marlowe, she could feel him through some new connection the spring had forged between them. Could feel his pain, his fear, but also his relief. Because whatever the spring was doing, it wasn't stealing his humanity. It was anchoring it, binding it to hers. They were becoming something new, something neither shifter nor human, but both, together. Dr. Voss screamed in rage, rushing forward, but it was too late. The spring's power was already flowing into them, transforming them, and when they lifted their heads and looked at her, she stumbled back, her face going pale, because their eyes were glowing, not with the fever-bright blue of her infected subjects, but with gold, the color of sunset, of fire, of something ancient and wild and absolutely unstoppable. "What have you done?" Dr. Voss whispered. Rowan smiled, and it was all wolf. "We evolved." And then they shifted. Not into one form, but into two, and then three, and then four, flowing from shape to shape with a fluidity that defied physics. Wolf to eagle to bear to cougar, Rowan and Marlowe moving as one. Their consciousness linked, their powers magnified beyond anything Dr. Voss could have imagined. This was what the spring did. Not cure, not amplify in the way the doctor thought. It connected. It bound two shifters into one unified force, each supporting the other, each making the other stronger. They were no longer two separate wolves. They were a pack. and they were unstoppable. The infected subjects that Dr. Voss had sent after them didn't stand a chance. Rowan and Marlowe moved through them like wind through grass, disabling them without killing, removing the devices at the base of their skulls with surgical precision. And as each device was destroyed, the infected person collapsed, freed from the nightmare they'd been trapped in. Thomas Crane fell to his knees, gasping, his eyes clearing to human brown. Others followed: 6 rangers, 3 hikers, all people who'd been missing for months. All people Dr. Voss had transformed into weapons. The doctor herself tried to run, but Marlowe, in the form of a wolf larger than any natural wolf, should be blocked her path. He didn't attack, just stood there, golden eyes fixed on her, waiting. "You can't," Dr. Voss clutched with his tablet like a lifeline. "I have backers, resources, a whole team who will find nothing but freed prisoners in a destroyed laboratory," Rowan said, shifting back to human. The transformation was effortless now, natural as breathing. "It's over, Dr. Voss. You lost." The woman's face twisted with rage and grief. "I was so close to perfecting it, to creating the ultimate soldier." "You weren't creating soldiers." Marlowe shifted back, standing beside Rowan, their hands finding each other automatically. "You were creating slaves, and that was never going to end well for you." Dr. Voss lunged, a knife appearing in her hand where she'd hidden it. Rowan didn't know. But before the blade could connect, she shifted instinctively into eagle form, her talons catching the weapon and wrenching it away. She landed, shifted back, kicked the knife into the darkness. "Take her," she said to Thomas, who was struggling to his feet. "You know the way back. Radio for backup. Tell them everything." Thomas nodded, swaying but determined. He grabbed Dr. Voss's arm, and several other freed captives joined him, surrounding the doctor. She fought, screaming about visions and progress and the future, but she was just one woman against a dozen people she'd tortured. They would make sure she never hurt anyone again. As they disappeared back through the cleft, silence fell over the cavern. Rowan and Marlowe stood at the edge of the origin spring, its glow dimming now, its power spent. "We drank it all," Rowan said quietly. "No one else can use it now." "Good. That power shouldn't exist. It's too dangerous." Marlowe turned to her, and in his eyes she saw wonder. "I can remember everything, Rowan. My mother's songs, my own childhood. It's all there again." And he laughed, the sound breaking with relief. "I'm not dying anymore. I can feel it. The spring didn't cure me. It stabilized me." "It bound us," she said, reaching up to touch his face. "I can feel you in my head, your emotions, your thoughts. Are you okay with that?" "Are you kidding? For the first time in 2 years, I'm not alone in here." He tapped his temple. "And neither are you. We're pack now, real pack. Connected on a level I didn't think was possible." It should have been terrifying, but it felt like coming home. Rowan kissed him, then there in the glowing darkness of the Whisper Caves, and it was like kissing lightning, like kissing the forest itself. Their connection flared bright, not overwhelming, just right. Two souls recognizing each other, choosing each other, bound together by something ancient and new simultaneously. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, both smiling. "So," Marlowe said, "what do we do now?" Rowan looked at the cavern, at the spring, at the man who was no longer quite a stranger. "We make sure this place stays hidden. We find all of Dr. Voss's victims and help them heal. We learn what it means to be what we've become. And after that, she smiled, we figure out how to live together as whatever we are now." I like the sound of that. They left the Whisper Caves hand in hand, two shifters who'd been alone for so long they'd forgotten what connection felt like. The forest was waiting for them, and somewhere in its depths were answers to questions they hadn't yet learned to ask. But that was fine. They had time now. They had each other. And they had a power that neither of them fully understood. Yet in a bond forged in the origin spring, a connection that made them stronger together than they'd ever been apart. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. 3 days after the origin spring, Rowan still couldn't sleep alone. Not because she was afraid, though the nightmares about Dr. Voss's lab and the infected subjects came regularly, but because every time she closed her eyes, she could feel Marlowe's presence in her mind, a warm pulse of consciousness that told her exactly where he was, what he was feeling, whether he was safe. The bond was both gift and burden. She stood on the porch of her cabin in the pre-dawn darkness, watching mist rise from the forest floor. Inside, Marlowe was asleep in the loft, actual sleep, deep and dreamless, the first real rest he'd had in 2 years. Through their connection, she could feel his peace, and it settled something in her own chest that had been restless for a decade. But it also scared her. This intimacy, this exposure. She'd spent so long building walls, and now they were gone, dissolved by spring water and desperation and choice. Her radio crackled. "Rowan, you there?" She pressed the button. "Copy. We found another one, about 2 miles from the Whisper Caves. Female mid-20s, been missing for approximately 3 years." A pause. "She's asking for you specifically." Rowan's heart stopped. 3 years. That timeline matched. "Does she have a name?" she asked, though she already knew. "Says her name is Iris Chen." The radio fell from Rowan's hand. Marlowe found her 10 minutes later, still frozen on the porch, staring at nothing. He didn't say anything, just wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside her, their thighs touching his warmth, bleeding into her cold skin. "I felt it," he said quietly. "The shock, the grief, the terror. What happened?" "Iris." Her voice cracked on the name. "She's alive. She's been alive this whole time, and I thought I spent 10 years thinking I killed her." Marlowe's hand found hers. "Where is she?" "Medical tent at base camp. They're treating all the freed victims there." Rowan turned to him, and she knew her eyes were wet. "I don't know if I can face her. What do I say? How do I explain that I ran, that I abandoned her?" "You were 17, you were terrified, and you thought she was dead." He squeezed her hand. "But she's alive, Rowan, and she's asking for you. That means something." It meant everything. Or nothing. Rowan couldn't tell anymore. "Will you come with me?" she asked. "Of course, we're packed now. You don't face anything alone anymore." The word pack settled around her like a second skin. She'd forgotten what it meant to belong to something larger than herself, to trust someone enough to let them see her completely. "Thank you," she whispered. They dressed quickly and hiked through the morning forest toward the base camp. It was strange moving through these familiar woods with Marlowe beside her, feeling his presence not just physically but mentally. She could sense his alertness, his protectiveness, the way he scanned the shadows for threats. And underneath it all, a current of concern for her that made her chest ache. "You're thinking too loud," his voice said in her mind, not words exactly, but impressions, feelings shaped into language. "Sorry, still getting used to this." "Me too. But Rowan?" A pulse of warmth. "I like it. Being connected to you. It's the opposite of loneliness." She squeezed his hand and he squeezed back, and they walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence. Base camp was chaos. Rangers and medical personnel moved between tents tending to the freed victims. Some were recovering well, talking and eating and crying with relief. Others were catatonic, staring at nothing, their minds damaged by months or years of being controlled. Thomas Crane sat outside the medical tent, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders, a cup of coffee clutched in his shaking hands. When he saw Rowan, he stood swaying slightly. "Rowan, thank you for," he gestured vaguely, "for saving us, all of us." "I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner," she said. "Don't be. You found us at all. That's more than—" His voice broke. 6 months. I was trapped for 6 months. Watching my body do things I couldn't stop. It was— He closed his eyes. "I don't know how to live with what I did while I was under her control." Marlowe stepped forward. "You're not responsible for what she made you do. The guilt belongs to her, not you." Thomas nodded, but his expression said he didn't believe it yet. Maybe he never would. Some wounds went too deep. "Iris is inside," Thomas said, gesturing to the tent. She's different from the rest of us. Voss had her longer, did more to her, but she's strong, she's fighting." Rowan's stomach twisted. "What did Voss do to her?" "You should hear it from her." Thomas looked away. "Just be prepared. She's not the girl you remember." That was what Rowan was afraid of. She pushed through the tent flap, Marlowe a solid presence behind her. The interior smelled of antiseptic and fierce sweat. Cots lined both walls, occupied by victims in various states of recovery. And there in the far corner, sitting upright with her back against the canvas wall, was Iris. She looked like a ghost of the girl Rowan remembered. Thin, too thin, with hollows under her eyes and scars on her arms that spoke of years of violence. Her hair had been long. Once Rowan remembered braiding it during sleepovers, laughing about boys and homework and which animals they wanted to try shifting into next. Now it was shorn short, almost military style. But her eyes, dark brown, sharp with intelligence, were the same. Those eyes found Rowan across the tent, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Iris smiled. It was a broken, damaged thing, but it was real. Took you long enough, she said. Rowan crossed the tent in 3 strides and fell to her knees beside the cot, tears streaming down her face. I thought you were dead. I thought I killed you. You did, kind of. The old Iris died that day. Iris reached out her hand, trembling, and touched Rowan's cheek. But maybe that needed to happen. Maybe we both needed to break before we could become what we were meant to be. What did she do to you? Rowan choked out. Iris's smile faded. What didn't she do? 3 years, Rowan. 3 years of experiments, of being controlled, of having devices implanted and removed and reimplanted, of being forced to shift until I thought I'd lose my mind. She pulled up her sleeve, showing dozens of small scars. She was trying to make me like her, a shifter who could choose, who could control others. She almost succeeded. But you're free now. Am I? Iris looked at her own hands. I can still feel the device sometimes, like a ghost of it still embedded in my skull. And when I shift, it's different now. Wrong, like my body doesn't quite remember what it's supposed to be. Marlowe knelt beside Rowan, and Iris's eyes shifted to him, widening slightly. You're the alpha, she said. I could feel you when you were in the cave. Your power, it was... She shuddered. It was like standing next to the sun. I'm sorry if I frightened you, Marlowe said gently. You didn't frighten me. You gave me hope. Iris looked between them. You bonded. I can see it, the way your energies tangled together. Voss theorized that was possible, but she never managed to force it. It has to be chosen. You know about the bond? Rowan asked. I know a lot of things I wish I didn't. Voss used to talk while she worked. She thought I was too controlled to remember. But shifter memory is different when we're in animal form. It's sensory, emotional. I remember everything. Iris's voice hardened, including the names of her backers, the people who funded this, the ones who wanted an army of controlled shifters. Marlowe went very still. Corporations, government contractors, people who saw us as resources, not humans. Iris reached under her pillow and pulled out a small drive. I stole this from her lab the night before you destroyed it. It has everything, names, locations, finances, enough to bring down her entire network. Rowan took the drive, its weight impossibly heavy in her palm. Why are you giving this to us? Because you're the only one strong enough to do something about it. You're bonded. That makes you more powerful than any single shifter. And Iris's voice dropped to a whisper. Because I'm dying, Rowan. Whatever Voss did to me, it's killing me. My body can't sustain the damage anymore. I have maybe 6 months, maybe less. No, the word came out fierce, desperate. No, we'll find a way to save you. The spring is gone. You drank it dry. And even if it wasn't, Iris smiled sadly. Some things can't be fixed. Some damage goes too deep. I've made my peace with it. Rowan felt like she was breaking. After all these years, she'd finally gotten her best friend back, only to lose her again. Marlowe's hand touched her shoulder, and through their bond, she felt his sorrow mixing with her own, and somehow that made it bearable. Shared grief was lighter than solitary grief. Then we'll make sure your death means something, Marlowe said to Iris. We'll take down everyone involved in this. Every person who hurt you, who used you. We'll make them answer for it. Iris nodded, and there were tears on her cheeks now. Thank you, both of you. She looked at Rowan. I'm glad you found someone. I'm glad you're not alone anymore. That's all I wanted, for you to stop running. To stop blaming yourself for something that was never your fault. I should have protected you, Rowan whispered. You did. You ran so they wouldn't catch you too. You survived. And now you're saving people. That's protection enough. Iris squeezed her hand. Let me go, Rowan. Let me rest knowing you're okay. That's all I need. They sat together for a long time, two girls who'd been inseparable, once then torn apart, now reunited briefly before the final separation. Marlowe gave them space, stepping outside to give them privacy, but Rowan could feel him just beyond the tent wall, a steady presence holding vigil. "Tell me about him," Iris said eventually. "Tell me everything." So Rowan did. She told Iris about meeting Marlowe, about the reveal in the forest, about the origin spring, and the bond it forged. She told her about the way she could feel him in her mind, now the way their wolves recognized each other as pack, the way for the first time in 10 years, she felt like she might actually deserve to be happy. Iris listened smiling, and when Rowan finished, she said, "He's your mate. You know that, right? Not just your bond partner, your mate, the one your wolf has been waiting for." I'm not sure I believe in that kind of thing." "You do now." Iris's eyes were knowing. "I can see it in how you talk about him, how your whole body orients toward him even when he's not in the room. That's mate bond, Rowan. It's rare, precious. Don't waste it." "I'm scared," Rowan admitted. "What if I mess it up? What if I'm not enough?" "You're already enough. You just have to believe it." Iris yawned, exhaustion pulling at her features. "I'm tired. Will you come visit me tomorrow?" "Every day," Rowan promised. "Every single day until I go, yeah." Iris closed her eyes. "I'm glad you're here, Ro. I'm glad I got to see you one more time. Got to know you're safe. That's enough. That's everything." Rowan stayed until Iris fell asleep, then slipped out of the tent to find Marlowe waiting exactly where she knew he'd be. "How is she?" he asked. "Dying, brave, at peace." Rowan leaned into him, and his arms came around her immediately. "I got her back just to lose her again." "But you got to say goodbye. That's more than most people get." He kissed the top of her head. "And we'll honor her. We'll take down everyone who hurt her." "Yes, we will." Rowan pulled back, looking up at him. The morning sun caught in his gray eyes, turning them silver. "Iris called you my mate. Do you feel that this thing between us?" "I feel everything between us. And yes, mate feels right. More than right. Like something my wolf has been searching for my entire life." He cupped her face. "Is that okay?" "It's terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying?" "Good, I think. I don't know. Ask me again in a year." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I'll ask you every year for the rest of our lives if you want." "That's a long time." "Not long enough." He kissed her, then slow and deep, and through their bond she could feel his love washing over her like warm water. Steady and sure, and absolutely unwavering. It made her want to cry and laugh and run through the forest all at once. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Marlowe rested his forehead against hers. "What do we do now?" he asked. "We have names. Evidence. We could bring down an entire network of people who exploit shifters. We hunt them." "Them," Rowan said, her voice hard. "All of them. We make sure they never hurt another shifter again. And we find every victim, every person who was taken, and we bring them home. That could take years. I don't care. Some things are worth fighting for." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "Are you with me?" "Rowan, I'm bonded to you. I'm literally incapable of being anywhere else." He grinned. "But also, yes, I'm with you. For all of it. The hunt, the rescue, the fight, all of it." They spent the next week at base camp, helping the freed victims adjust, gathering evidence from Dr. Voss's destroyed lab, planning their next move. The Park Service wanted answers, and Rowan gave them a carefully edited version of the truth: a rogue scientist, illegal experiments, animals, and people used as test subjects. She left out the shapeshifter elements, the spring, the bond. Some secrets were worth keeping. Dr. Voss herself was in federal custody, facing charges that would put her away for life. She tried to bargain, offering information about her backers in exchange for leniency, but Marlowe and Rowan already had everything they needed from Iris's drive. Voss had nothing left to trade. Justice, slow and bureaucratic, was coming for all of them. Iris lasted 2 weeks. Rowan was with her at the end, holding her hand as her breathing slowed and finally stopped. It was peaceful, quiet, nothing like the violence that had defined the past 3 years of Iris's life. "Thank you," Iris had whispered in her last moments, "for finding me, for freeing me, for letting me rest." And then she was gone. They buried her in a clearing deep in the Olympic forest, far from trails and tourists, where wildflowers grew and elk grazed. Rowan and Marlowe shifted into wolves for the ceremony, It felt right honoring Iris with their true forms, and they howled as the sun set a sound of mourning and release that echoed through the trees. Thomas and the other freed victims came to pay respects. They stood in a circle around the grave, humans who'd been monsters and survived, who'd been freed and were learning to live again. They didn't speak, didn't need to. They all understood loss. Afterward, as darkness fell, Marlowe and Rowan stayed in the wolf form, running through the forest together, chasing the moon, letting their grief transform into motion. They ran for hours, tireless, their minds linked, their hearts beating in sync. Eventually, they stopped in the clearing where they'd first revealed themselves to each other, where everything had changed. "She's at peace," Marlowe said through their bond, his wolf form pressing against hers. "I know. I can feel it. No more pain, no more fear." Rowan's wolf voice was tired. "I just wish I'd had more time. Time is always too short. That's why we have to make it count." He nuzzled her neck. "What do you want to do with yours? Hunt the people who hurt her. Protect other shifters. Make sure no one else suffers like she did." She paused. "And be with you. Build something that lasts. Whatever that looks like. It looks like this. Us, pack, mates, partners." His joy pulsed through their connection. "I spent 2 years thinking I was dying, that I'd lose myself piece by piece until nothing remained. And then I found you. And the spring didn't cure me, it gave me you. A reason to stay human. A reason to remember. You're not going to lose yourself. I won't let you." "I know. Because you're stubborn and fierce and absolutely terrifying when you want to be." He playfully nipped at her ear. "Also, you're beautiful, even as a wolf, especially as a wolf, flatterer, truth-teller." They shifted back to human naked in the moonlight, and Rowan let Marlowe pull her into his arms. His skin was warm against the cold air, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I love you," she said quietly. "I don't think I've said it out loud yet. But I do, I love you." He went very still. "Then say it again." "I love you, Marlowe Cross. I love your broken pieces and your brave heart and the way you make me feel like I'm not alone anymore." "I love you too, Rowan Ashford. I love your fierce loyalty and your wounded soul and the way you make me want to be better than I am." He kissed her forehead. "I love that you're my mate, my pack, my home." They stood there in the clearing, two naked shifters holding each other under the stars. And for the first time in either of their lives, they felt complete. Not perfect, they were both too damaged for perfect. But whole. Together. Enough. 6 months later, they stood on the porch of a new cabin larger than Rowan's old ranger station, built specifically for two people who needed space and solitude in each other. They'd spent those 6 months hunting. Following the trail of names and locations from Iris's drive, they'd tracked down 12 operations similar to Voss's. 12 labs where shifters were being experimented on, controlled, weaponized. They'd freed 37 victims, killed no one, but left plenty of people in police custody to face justice. The network was crumbling, slowly but surely, and through it all, they'd learned what it meant to be bonded, to share thoughts and feelings and forms, to be so connected that they could shift together, fight together, exist as one unified force that was greater than either of them alone. But they'd also learned to be separate, to give each other space when needed, to respect boundaries even when those boundaries were now permeable. It was a balance, this new life. Challenging, rewarding, terrifying, and beautiful in equal measure. "I've been thinking," Marlowe said, leaning against the porch railing, "about what comes next. What comes next is we finish the list, we free everyone, we bring them all home. Yes, but after that, when the list is done, when the fight is over." He turned to look at her. "What do we do then?" Rowan considered. For so long she'd lived day to day, never planning for a future she didn't think she deserved. But now she had Marlowe. She had purpose. She had hope. "We live," she said simply. "We protect this park. We help young shifters learn control. We build something good from all this pain. We could have kids, if you wanted, someday." Her breath caught. She'd never let herself imagine that possibility. Bonded shifters can have children. There are stories, rare stories, but they exist. Children of bonded pairs are supposed to be, he hesitated, special, powerful, balanced. "Are you asking me if I want to have your children, Marlowe Cross?" Maybe. Eventually, no pressure, just thinking out loud. She crossed to him, taking his hands. Ask me again in a year. He laughed. You keep saying that, and you keep waiting. That's one of the things I love about you. What else do you love? Everything, your patience, your strength, the way you look at me like I'm the only thing in the world worth seeing, the way our wolves play together when we shift, the way you make me feel safe enough to imagine a future. That's a lot of love. It's really not enough. She kissed him slow and thorough. I could spend a lifetime listing the things I love about you and still not cover everything. Good thing we have a lifetime. Good thing. They stood together on the porch watching the sunset over the Olympic Mountains, and Rowan thought about how far she'd come. From a girl running from her own nature to a woman who'd embraced it. From solitary wolf to part of a pack. From broken to healing. Not healed, maybe never fully healed, but healing. With Marlowe beside her, that felt possible. Through their bond, she felt his contentment, his love, his absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. Forever, she asked silently. Forever, he confirmed. Or however long we have. But I'm betting on forever. That's a big bet. I'm good at taking risks, especially when the reward is you. She smiled, leaning into him, and together they watched darkness fall over the forest. Somewhere out there, shifters were still suffering, still trapped, still waiting for someone to save them. And Rowan and Marlowe would find them, would free them, would keep fighting until every single victim of Dr. Voss's network was safe. But tonight they were home. They were together, they were whole. Two shapeshifters who'd found each other in the darkness, who'd chosen connection over isolation, who drunk from the origin spring and emerged bonded, changed stronger than they had ever been alone. They were pack. They were mates. They were forever. And that was enough. That was everything. The forest whispered its approval, and in the distance, wolves howled, not infected, not controlled, just wild and free. They were meant to be. Rowan and Marlowe howled back, and the sound was joy, was triumph, was a promise to themselves and each other that they would never stop fighting, never stop protecting, never stop choosing love over fear. The moon rose over the mountains, silver and perfect, and two bonded shifters stood beneath it, holding hands facing the future together. Between forms, they'd found their truth. In each other, they'd found their home. 2 years later, the young woman stumbled into the ranger station at Olympic National Park, wild-eyed and terrified, her hands shaking as she tried to explain what she was. Please, she begged. I cannot control it. I hurt someone. I didn't mean to, but I shifted and... Rowan held up a hand, her voice gentle. It's okay. You're safe here. We understand. You understand. We are shifters too, Marlowe said, coming to stand beside Rowan, and we can help you learn control. Teach you what you are. Give you a place where you don't have to hide. The girl's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was a monster. You're not a monster, Rowan said firmly. You're just someone who hasn't learned to accept all of yourself yet. But you will. We'll show you. Over the past 2 years, 34 young shifters had found their way to the Olympic forest, drawn by rumors of a sanctuary, a place where they could be themselves without fear. Rowan and Marlowe had created a network, a safe haven for shifters who needed guidance, protection, community. It wasn't a cure, it wasn't perfect, but it was hope, and sometimes hope was enough. Welcome to the pack, Marlowe said, smiling. You're home now. And in the mountains of Washington state, hidden in the ancient forests, a new kind of family grew. Not bound by blood, but by understanding, by acceptance, by the knowledge that being different wasn't the same as being alone. The shifters had found each other, and they would never be lost again.